everyone and welcome to my channel, Data Pairs. Today I'm going to be showing you an end-to-end tutorial on how to develop your report in Power BI or your first report in Power BI. It's going to be a very interesting video today, so stay tuned. If it's the very first time that you're watching my videos, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with my latest videos. Like, comment down below and give me ideas for my next videos. I will really be looking forward to it. Today we are going to do a tutorial on Power BI report development, like an end-to-end solution, like I mentioned before. We have a bunch of data that you would need to combine, sales data, and yeah, if you're just a beginner, you're just starting to play with Power BI and want to learn more about it, you're feeling a bit confused or a bit lost, then this is the perfect video for you. So without further ado, let's just jump into my laptop and start on this tutorial straight away. I'll see you there. Before we jump to Power BI, I just want to show you the use case and the data that we will be working with. In my folder here, I have a table for products, which I can open so you can have a look at how the table looks like. This is my products table, as you can see. And I also have a customers table, which doesn't look too bad, right? And I also have the data for my sales. Every year I have a different file for the sales, so I will have to combine these files somehow. Just a little remark that these files all have the same structure, and what I mean with the same structure, and this will be very important for the connector that we are going to use later on to connect to this data. So the same structure means that we always have the same columns with kind of the same information, just data, new data, depending on the year. So all the files look exactly the same, except the data in this case is for 2020, we have for 2021, and so on and so forth. But the structure of the files is exactly the same. Jumping into Power BI Desktop, if this is the first time that you're looking at Power BI Desktop, let me give you an overview of what we are looking at here. So when you open Power BI Desktop, it will open in this view. So this is the reporting view. This is what you will use as your canvas, and this is where you will build your reports and add your visualizations on. You also have the data view. So when you have data loaded into your report, you will be able to see all your tables here and explore that data a little bit if you have to. And also we have the relationships view. This is where we are going to build the relationships or schema for our different tables, but more on that later on. Coming back to the report view, in the report view, you have the visualizations tab and you have the fields tab. The fields tab, once again, will show you all the tables that you loaded into your report once we loaded that data. They will all show here. You will be able to see the tables and the columns. And then in the visualizations pane, you have all the visualizations you can choose from. You can also get more custom visuals if you want. And in this section here, once you have a visualization, you can format that visualization using the Format tab of the Visualizations tab. A little bit confusing, I know. It will become easier once we get some data in and we manage to work with that data and build our report. On top, you have multiple tabs. You have the Home tab, where you have the most important button of all, which is Get Data. You have the Insert tab, which allows you to insert like different shapes, buttons, text boxes, or even visuals. You have the Modeling tab, which allows you to build new measures, tables, quick measures, and so on. And also you have the View tab, which allows you to change, for example, the theme of your report, or change the page view, or the layout. You can also have a mobile layout if you want to, which shows slightly different, as you can see, so you can customize the layout of your report when it shows in mobile devices. You have the bookmarks pane, the selection pane, and some other stuff that you don't need to worry about now. You also have a help and some external tools. If you have external tools that you're using to enhance your Power BI capabilities, then this is the place where you get those tools. But first, the Home tab is the most important one right now. The first step that we are going to do is to get our data. Our data is in CSV files, as you remember. The sales data is in multiple files that all have the same structure, and then we have customers data and also the products data. We are going to load all of that into our report, transform that data, clean that data, and then build a data model and a schema on top of those tables. So let's start with getting the data. So we want to get the data from the text or CSV. And in this case, I'm not going to start with the sales data. I'm going to start with the customers data. So let's open the customers table. This is now connecting to my Excel file. Power BI is connecting to my Excel file. It will give me a preview of the data, which you can quickly check if everything looks okay. For me, it looks okay. So instead of loading the data, I want to transform it or to have a look at it first and transform and clean this data if I have to. So the best practice is always click on the transform data and check your data a little bit more carefully and with time to see if you have any data cleaning that you need to do with your table. Once you're in Power Query, this is the query editor, the Power Query view. This view is a little bit different. If you're an Excel user, if you use Power Query, it's kind of the same concept or pretty much the same. Some things are similar, some others not so much, but the concept is pretty much the same if you're an Excel user and you use Power Query. If you're not, if you've never seen anything like this in your life before, so this is where you transform your data, where you clean your data. You will be able to see all your queries, different queries that you built, connecting to different files, because yes, you will be able to connect to a bunch of different files if you have to, and combine files even from different sources. You can have something on Azure or SQL Server and Excel files, and you can combine all that data, all those tables together using Power Query. You can bring that data in and transform that data in Power Query and then build a model and a report that is reporting insights over different data sources. If you go here to get source, I just want to show you all the different types of connectors that you can use and that you can connect to. So you have more than 100 connectors, as you can see here. It's loads of connectors that you can use. And again, you can connect to 5 types of data sources, different data sources if you have to, and build one single report on top of that. So this allows you to connect to different types of sources, either files, connect to JSON, text, or CSV, Excel, PDF. You can even connect to PDF files if you want. You have Azure, like blob storage or Cosmos DB, anything you want really, Databricks. So you can have 3 different queries from 3 different sources and everything will work, hopefully. So now that we connected to our data source, the second step is to have a quick verification on our data and see if we need to do some data cleaning. So I can see that we have customer first name and probably we have customer last name. So this is the first thing that I'm going to do. I want to combine these 2 columns together so that I can have like the customer full name. I don't think it's worth it to have it in 2 separate columns. So let's combine these columns together. So I'm selecting the customer first name, and by clicking on control, I can select both. I need to select the first name first because I'm going to combine these tables. So, and the order that I select them will influence how Power BI is combining these tables. So I'm going to select the first name first and then the last name. And now I can right click and say that I want to merge the columns, and the separator can be a space and the new column will be customer name. So this is my customer name, and now I have the customer name and all the others disappeared. And why? Because I'm transforming the column, I'm not adding a new column. If you look here on top, you have 2 tabs, one that says transform, another one that says add column. And both tabs, they allow you to do similar things. The difference is when you're using or applying transformations over your data using the transform, the transformation steps on the transform tab, then it will replace basically those columns that you're transforming and replace that with a new column. If you're using the transformations from the add column tab, then it will keep the old columns and just add a new one with a transformation. In this case, the customer name was replaced, like it kind of replaced my 2 first columns with this one, which is customer full name. If I added a new column, or if I use this add column tab, then I would still have those 2 columns, the first name and last name for my customer, which I don't really want. They are redundant. So this is exactly what I wanted to do. And if you notice, you have this applied steps here on the side, which have source, you have promote headers, change type, and now merged columns. So every time you apply a transformation step to your data, Power Query will automatically generate like a transformation step here, and it will apply these steps once you hit the refresh button later on. What Power Query or Power BI will do is just basically run all these steps for you and clean the data for you. So everything that we are doing here in Power Query now, we only have to do it once, and then we just need to hit refresh, and Power BI will do all these transformations and all this data cleaning automatically for us, which is amazing, right? You only have to do it once. It's a huge time saver. Every time you apply a step, what generates, it's a little code, as you can see here. So this code is what Power BI will run later on. It will run the code for all the steps and apply all the transformation steps. So now that we did this transformation step, I want to transform, again, go into the transform tab, this column customer name a little bit, because the names, they are lowercase, so I want to transform this. I can click on format, and I want to capitalize each word. So now the first name and last name, they have the capitalized, like the first letter is capitalized, which looks a lot nicer. So the next column that we are going to look at is the market column. So the market column doesn't look very good. It has some parentheses that probably shouldn't be here. So what we are going to do is to add a new column and add a column from examples. So this allows you to get a new column based on whatever instructions you give. You just have to write kind of the first piece of text, and then Power BI will automatically realize that you want to remove the parentheses, which is great. So this is exactly what I want to do. And now we have this new column, but we probably have still the old one, which we don't need. So we can remove this column and keep only this new one. I totally forgot what was the name of the other column. Market, that was the name. So let's change the name of our newly created column to market. Can just double click on the header of the column and replace it, the name. And now everything looks kind of okay to me. So let's try and load our next table, which is the product table. So let's go to a new source, text or CSV, and now let's load in the products table. Again, another preview, and this doesn't look very good to me, but we are going to clean this a little bit. Now you can see that we have these two first rows, the headers are all wrong, so we need to clean this up a little bit. The first step that I'm going to apply is remove the top rows. I'm going to remove the top two rows, as you can see here, so I can just have the headers of my columns. Still, the headers are not correct because you still have the headers. There's column 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is not what we want. We want this one to be the headers of our table. So we have a step here called use first row as headers. If you apply this step, then our first row is now the headers, and the headers look correct. However, if I look here, there is something really weird happening. I think they did this table in a very Excel kind of format, and this is not good for Power BI. This is probably the category of the product, and this should be a column because this is not structured data yet. This is not good data for Power BI to work with, so we need to transform this table a little bit more. I want this to be a column instead of 3 separate columns, because again, this will make my life so much easier later when I'm building my reports, because the data is structured and right now it really isn't. So one of the things that we can do is, again, clicking on control, select all the 3 columns, and in transform, just unpivot this column. So we are going to make these columns, like transform these columns into one single column, which will be my product category. We can see a few extra rows, so I can see that this product belongs to furniture and furnishings, which makes sense, but all the others don't make sense. But because we did the unpivot, now we have a few extra rows that we don't actually need. So what we can do is just remove the blanks and leave only the rows that we want, which correspond to the right attribute or the right category and subcategory for that specific product. So now we don't need this column anymore. We can remove it and change the column header name to product category or just category. So very easy to transform these tables so far, not very bad tables, I would say. The data structure was not horrible, but let's move on to the sales. So now, because I know the sales are in a folder, I'm using something a little bit different. I'm getting a new connector, which is the folder connector. In the folder connector, we are going to connect again to our folder. When you click on connect, you can either browse for the folder where your files are, in this case my sales files, or I can just paste the path directly here, which is what I'm going to do because I'm lazy, you know. Let's click on OK, and it gives me like a preview, which looks kind of okay to me. And now let's click on combine and transform data. I have another video where I'm kind of explaining a better way to do this, but for now, because this is like a beginner's video, I will just do the kind of normal standard folder connector. But if you're curious, there is another video that I'm going to put the link in the description below if you want to check. I'm also going to put, of course, all the files that I'm using, so you can do this yourself at home if you want, and kind of replicate this project, this example that I'm giving you today. So let's click on combine and transform. This will give me another preview of the data, which I'm going to leave it as it is. And now Power BI will basically combine all those different sales files for me, as you can see here. So if I check here what's happening in the source name, which is the file name, you can see that all my files are combined into one single table, with like literally just 3 clicks. This is all that I had to do to combine all these files together. So very, very easy in Power BI to combine loads of different CSV files or Excel files together, which is a task that I'm pretty sure a lot of people do, like by doing copy paste or something like that. In here, way much easier. Power BI also added like all these steps for me, these transformation steps, even the change type. And I'm just going to give like a quick look at my table again to check if everything looks okay. So now I have here these date columns that don't really look okay to me. So I'm going to define it as just date. And here I'm going to add a new step, define it as date. And now everything looks okay to me. I have all my 3 tables and now I'm ready to load them into Power BI. So let's close and apply. And hopefully the refresh won't take too long. This is now loading the data to my Power BI file. And now the load is finished. So let's check our tables. I mentioned before, once you load the data, you will be able to see all the tables here. You have the sales table with all the corresponding columns. You have the products table, and then you have the customers table. And now you can always use all these columns and data to build your own reports. This is in the report tab. In the data tab, you can still see our tables, but it allows you to do a little bit more exploration if you have to, just to verify quickly some numbers, which I do very frequently. This is the data view, and then you have the relationships view. And the relationships view, this is where you build your relationships between your columns. So why do you need to build the relationships between your tables, not columns, sorry? Because imagine that you want to use the product name and the sales for each product. So you want to use the column product name from the products table, but the sales value is in your sales table. So if you don't connect the tables, this is what's going to happen. We can try to do that now. So let's bring in the product. So the product name or the category, let's do it by category. And you can just take this column and drag it to your canvas, and this will automatically kind of generate a chart for you, which you can change then to a column chart, for example. And now let's bring in the sales to actually it's the x-axis, and let's switch this, or it's the other. So now let's bring in the sales to the x-axis. So if you notice, all the values are the same. They are all 12 million and something, and this is probably not correct. And the reason this is happening is because if we go back to our model view, our relationships view, these tables are not connected. But you do have the product ID to connect both tables. So if you're an Excel user, This kind of looks like or works like a VLOOKUP in a way. So if you connect both tables using your relationship, then Power BI knows how to get the right sales for the product category. So let's try to combine these two tables. And then we have a many-to-many warning. So you can have one-to-many or many-to-one relationships, which should be the ideal scenario. With many-to-many, this is not what you want. In this case, it means that you either have blank values in your products table, which might happen, or you have duplicate values in both tables. And being the product table or your dimensional table, you should not have duplicated IDs in your product table. Each line should correspond to a single product. It shouldn't contain duplicated products because there is no sense in doing that. So let's try to understand what's happening, because this product table shouldn't contain duplicated values because it's a dimensional table. If I go back to my reports, the way that I quickly try to verify this is by bringing in the product ID, and it automatically fills me this as a table, and then I bring product ID again and I can do some calculation. So if you click on the little arrow here, down arrow, not error, and you count the product IDs, you can see there is a blank. That is a lot of blanks here. So that is something probably in our query that is giving us blank values for some reason. So let's go back to our query, and it happens sometimes, data cleaning, sometimes it's not finished like at first, so it happens. So in this scenario, I'm going to click in the little arrow on next to the column header, and I'm going to remove the empty ones, the empty rows, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be needing these blank rows. I only want the ones that have an ID. So if I close and apply now, these blank rows should be gone now, which they are, perfect. And now if we go back to our model and try to build this relationship again, hopefully it works. So now we have both tables connected. This relationship, Power BI automatically created it for me. So again, the relationships, they work kind of like a VLOOKUP in Excel. So in this case, it's connecting customer ID to the customer ID of the sales table. So you can get the customer name, market, region, and so on, and do multiple analysis based on all the three tables kind of combined together. So the sales is your fact table. It's where you have all your transactions. The customers and the products table is your dimensional tables, where you have all your dimensions. In this case, information about customers, about products, and so on. And this is what we call a star schema, and Power BI really do love star schemas. So this is what you should be aiming for, and not having like one single table that contains loads of information. You should always try to go for a star schema in Power BI, which corresponds to, again, to your transactions table, and then your dimensional tables, which contain details. Again, very easy example here with the sales contains details about your products, about your customers. There is one table though that we are missing. You should always have a date table, a dimensional date table. So we can create a table here. You can also create it in Power Query, and we should actually create it in Power Query, to be honest. It's the best practice, or bring it from the database directly, which we don't have. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to create the date table here, and this I'm going to call calendar table. And I'm going to just do calendar auto, and this formula, this is DAX, by the way, the first DAX measure or that you're going to be building. And in this case, the calendar auto returns a table with one column of dates calculated from the model automatically. So this function will automatically check in my data what dates do I have, and then generates the dates for that range that I have in my data. So this is exactly what I want. And now I have a new calendar table, and you can go to the data tab and quickly check what's happening here. The format is not very good. I just want the date, so I can change the format here in the column tools and just leave it as short date. And now we have only the dates, and now you can add more columns if you want. So a new column, you can add the year. And the year is something as simple as just the year function and get your dates in. And this will automatically calculate the year for you. You can do the same thing for quarter and so on and so forth. We will leave it just like this, but just for you to see that it's very easy to use DAX functions to create a calendar table. And for the month, for example, you can use month. For the quarter, you can use the quarter function. So it's pretty easy. And it's, again, if you use to Excel, it's pretty similar, the functions. We still need to build a relationship between our transactions table and our new dimensional table, which contains the dates. In this case, we are going to get the order date and connect both tables together. So now I have my full star schema, I have my customers table, my products table, my calendar table, all connected to my main transactions table with my sales. This is the end of the relationship building for this example. The next thing we are going to do is start building our report, and for that we need some DAX measures probably. So we use DAX already to build our table, but we probably need some measures to calculate sales and other things that we might need for our reporting solution. So to create a measure, you can either go to modeling and insert a new measure, or you can right click in any of the columns that you have in your fields and create a new measure, which is my preferred method for some reason. I don't know why. In this case, imagine you wanted the sales, so you can get a measure called total sales. The first thing you will do is give a name to your measure and then just do a simple sum of your sales. The DAX and here in Power BI is pretty clever, and it will give you automatically the fields that match whatever text you're typing. So that's pretty cool. And now in this measure, you can format it. So I can say this is currency. You can choose whatever currency you want. There are loads of different currencies to choose from. In this case, I will just leave it as dollars, like the most basic one. You can also define the number of decimal places, which I'm going to put as 0. So now you can do the same thing for the profit, for the quantity, for the shipping cost, and so on and so forth. But let's try to build a report now. So we built one very basic measure, and I just want to show you again, this should be a fast tutorial just to show you what DAX is in a way. So I will be building a more complex measure later, but let's try to build something up. So to build my report now, the first thing that I do is kind of define my layout, and I'm going to keep this simple. This is not usually the way I do it, but again, just to keep it simple, I'm going to just use, for example, a text box. So my report should always have a title, always. So here in my title, I'm going to say something like, this is my sales report. So this is my text box with my sales report. You can then format this, put the not so big, probably the title, make it bold. And you can also format the text box itself. So you can add a background, which can be, for example, gray. So this is going to be your header for your report, imagine. I have the rest of the space in my page to build my charts. Imagine that one of the first things that I wanted to do is to get my sales over time. So what am I going to do? I'm going to get the date from my calendar table, and I'm going to get the total sales. But first, because I dragged this, it automatically assumed I wanted a table, but I want a line chart. So I can quickly change the type of chart here, and I'm going to bring in total sales. So this automatically gives me the total sales for over time for my data that I have here, and this is going to be my first chart. We are going to try to be very quick with the chart creation. So let's focus on the sales for now. This is my first chart. There is a few things that you should understand also about Power BI. You have all these little arrows here, which allows you to go up and down in the hierarchy of whatever field you're using. And for example, in terms of dates, the hierarchy is year, quarter, month. So the first thing that you will see is the year usually. So this is by year now, but if you want to see the data by quarter, you can go one level down in the hierarchy, and this will then show you the data over time by quarter. And if you go one level down, it goes to month. If you go another level down, it goes to day. So this is how you can go up and down in the hierarchy of the dates in this case. So let's go back. Imagine that you just want it by year and month. You're not interested in seeing it by day or by quarter. So you can easily just remove levels of the hierarchy like this and leave it just as year and month. So this is our sales. Now imagine that you also wanted to check the sales by the product category. So let's bring in the product category, and you want to check it as a bar chart. And now let's bring in our total sales again. We are going to format these charts a little bit in the end. Power BI is pretty clever and allows you to kind of align your visuals pretty easily. So you should try to always align them if you can. Imagine that you also wanted to check this by the product subcategory for some reason. Using that hierarchy that you saw before in the line chart, we can bring in the product subcategory. Power BI automatically creates this kind of hierarchy for me and this different view over the data. And you can go up again in the hierarchy, and just for you to understand all what the other arrows are doing. So this one goes to the next hierarchy, or the next level of the hierarchy, which in this case will be the product subcategory, but it doesn't lose the context of the first level of the hierarchy, which is category. So it goes down, and you can see, you still see furniture, office supplies, and technology, which is the first level of the hierarchy, but it also goes to the next level. If you want to go back, just click on the back arrow or up arrow. And what are these other two arrows doing? This one, it also goes to the next level of the hierarchy, but it loses the context of the previous ones, which means that if you go down, you can't see product category. So it loses the context of the previous levels that you have in your hierarchy. This last one, it basically does a drill down, which means that, for example, you can click now on technology, and this will just show you everything, the subcategories for the category technology only. So it kind of filters the chart a little bit by whatever you selected, by whatever bar you selected before. So this is how these little arrows work, which is, I think, very helpful, especially for end users. For now, let's leave it as this, and let's check on the customers. Imagine that you also wanted to check sales by country. You can drag it here and bring in the sales, which as a bubble size. This kind of made it everything weird. Let me just go back to page view and fit to page. So now we have the sales by country. And lastly, imagine that you wanted to get the segment for the customers. So let's bring in the segment and do something like this, and which is a tree map, and also bring in the sales. So we almost have a report built already. Now it's a matter of formatting everything that we have. So one of the first things that you should consider when formatting your reports is spacing. So don't build a report page that looks like really full and there is no space between the visuals. Space is really important. So let's make this slightly smaller. And you can see I have some space here on the sides. I mean, this is roughly not exactly kind of the same size, obviously, but you get the idea, right? And the same thing with the map. I don't want it to be like right in the border. I want it to match the size of the other charts, which looks okay to me now. And the same thing with the tree map. You can quickly just make them kind of be on the same size. Now, let's format our charts a little bit. So in this case, we have to remove everything that is redundant and that we don't need. So in this scenario, one of those things is the axis titles. If you want to format your visual, you can go to format your visual while you have it selected, and then go to the axis, in this case, y-axis or x-axis, and remove the title. So see, the title that says date or year, which is really redundant right now, just disappears, which is exactly what I want. We can do the same for the y-axis, and it looks so much better straight away. You can also change the title, the background, but for now we are going to change the title, and this is going to be the sales over time, which is a better type of title. You can also, of course, change the type of text that you're using, make it bigger or smaller. And now if you want to format this visual a little bit, let's go back to general. And in the effects, you can have a visual border and a shadow. And then the visual border, if you leave it as it is, you can see it's black and it's not really, it's like a black border, which I don't really like. So you can go back to general, go to the effects, and in the visual border, you can define it as white or gray. And you can have it like a little rounded, like this. So this is your sales over time. You can do the same for the other chart, and to do that, it's exactly the same. You go to the x-axis, remove the title, go to the y-axis, remove the title, make the title of the chart itself a little bit more insightful by category and subcategory, make it the same, keep it consistent across the report always. And now let's go to general, in under the effects, add the visual border, leave it as gray, add some rounded corners, which looks nicer, and some shadow. So they are not the same, but they will be. Okay. So now we can do the same for all the other charts, but let's do that quickly because it's pretty much the same. Okay, so we have our report formatted already, and now the beauty of Power BI is if you click, for example, in consumer and the consumer segment, then everything else will filter by that selection, which is amazing, as you can see. However, as you can see here, this is highlighting. This is the default behavior of Power BI, which I don't really like. I don't think it's very insightful. Happens the other way around too. So you see, it's not very insightful, but that is a way you can change this. So by selecting this chart in this example, you can go to format and edit the interactions between the visuals. So in this case, the default interaction is highlighting, but I can switch it to filter. And the difference is it's filtering. So now I don't see the highlight, I see the actual values for the segment that I'm selecting, which is exactly what I want. If I do this the other way around, it's still not working. So I have to select this chart and do the same thing for the tree map. So now every time I select something, it just filters everything as it should. And the same thing for the country, of course. As you can see, it's something that you have to be careful because you want a report that is insightful, right? So you need to take care of these little things. Now let's assume everything is done and we have our report built, which is amazing. It didn't took us that long, right? So the next thing that you have to do is to publish your report to the Power BI service. So once you publish your report to Power BI service, then you will be able to schedule your data refresh. By the way, if you want to refresh your data, you can click here. If you want just to do a quick check, but the idea is to publish your report to Power BI service, which is the cloud environment. And this report is going to sit in your cloud environment, your Power BI service, where you can then schedule your data refresh. So your data can be refreshed, for example, every morning of every weekday. And this is something that you can do in Power BI service. And also, once you have this report published, then you can share this report with anyone inside or outside of your organization, depending a lot of licensing types and all of that, but let's ignore that for now. But then you can also share this report with other users in your organization. So let's publish this report. It always asks us to save changes. So let me save this report. And now if I try to publish, I'm going to publish this in my own workspace, data pair. So let's select that. And now my report is going to be published in the service. My report is published. We can now go to Power BI service and check what's happening. So in Power BI service, when you open Power BI service, you will see something like this. So this is the first thing you will see when you open the service. If I go to my workspace, then I can see all the content that I have in my workspace. A bunch of random stuff at the moment, and you can check by content or by data sets or data flows. So the content will be the report itself. Data sets and data flows, it's something else, but just for you to understand, every time you publish a report to the service, you always publish the data set and the report itself. So if you check here in the All tab, you always have the report and the data set, the report and the data set, the report and the data set. So if we scroll down and look for our sales report, which is here, we have the report and the data set. So it always publishes, you're always publishing two things, unless you're connecting to a shared data set, but let's ignore that for now. So if I open my report, I can see my report is here and everything is working wonderfully. So this is exactly what I wanted. So when I want now to schedule my refresh of my report, I go back to my workspace, try to check my data sets, and we need to schedule the refresh in the data set. There is a little icon here saying schedule refresh. So if you open it, then you have here your scheduled refresh. However, it will not allow me in this case to schedule the refresh because I'm connecting to my own like local folders. So it doesn't really allow me to do it because I need a gateway connection. And the gateway connection is basically the bridge that allows Power BI service to communicate with your data on premises. So this is why this is not working now, but it's something for you to consider. If you have your data in your own local machine or a local folder, then you need to consider that you need a gateway to connect to your data sources lately so that you can refresh your data, so you don't have to click manually in the refresh button. You can refresh your data on a daily basis, like if you have, depending on the licensing type that you have like 8 refreshes a day if you want, which is more than enough for the majority of scenarios. So this is where you schedule your report refresh. Once you have everything set up, your scheduled refresh done, then it's time to finally share your report with your end users. There are multiple ways that you can share your report with your end users, but I'm going to share with you the most basic one, which is going to the report directly. That is this little share icon here. You click on share, you just write the name of anyone in your organization. It automatically recognizes because Azure Active Directory. And then you can either send them an invite to see your report or copy the link, send an email on Teams. And yes, you can share this in multiple different ways. So there are a few security kind of definitions that you can change. You can either share this with people in your organization or people with existing access or specific people. And you can allow your users to share this report or to build content on top of this report. But again, let's keep it simple and let's leave it as it is. And then you can send the invitation, copy the link, or send a message on Teams to your colleague and they will be able to access your report. And this is my end-to-end process for report development in Power BI. It's a very, very simple example, but hopefully I managed to explain the entire end-to-end process. And just to recap, first, you need to connect to your data sources. Then you need to transform and clean your data. You need to make sure that all the relationships between the tables are properly built. You need to create your DAX measures. You need to create your report. Then you have to publish your report to Power BI service, which requires a license. So be careful with the licensing. And then you can schedule your data refresh and finally share the report with your end users. So kind of 8 things that you have to do. So I hope that this tutorial was insightful and that you're now more comfortable building Power BI reports, and I'll see you in the next one.